So way back in the day, I used to play this game on Newgrounds a lot. It was like a grid-based town building Flash game. Back when Flash was still a thing. And basically, the sort of core conceit of it was like you could type something in, and it would create the building in like the world. So if you type like town hall or something, it would appear in the world, and you could place it on like a 16 by 16 grid or something. It was really cool. I used to play it all the time, and then I grew up, and my GCSEs and my A-levels started happening, and I stopped playing it so much because you move on. And then a little while ago, I was like, man, I want to play that town game again, and I looked it up, and I Googled, and I went on like the town building section of Newgrounds games library, and I could not for the life of me find the thing. I've looked everywhere, so I'm hoping someone else out there will know what game I'm talking about. But I figure it's probably not enough to explain the premise of it in words, because I'm not very smart and I don't words good. So I'm trying to think of, is there a way I can illustrate what this game was in a way that someone might understand. So I created a new Unity project, and with that I was ready to jump right in and hold on there, pal. Before we even change anything in the scene, we need to set up some version control. I use Gmaster connected to a private GitHub repository so that if I ever think I'm about to mess anything up, I can push the game safely up there and pull it back down if I make a change that ruins the entire project. So per my excellent design, this town is going to need buildings. Now, as anyone who knows me can tell you, my 3D modeling isn't the best in the business in particular, so I figured I'd need to outsource it. Fortunately, I found this great low-poly ultimate pack on the Unity Asset Store, a great store for buying assets that you don't want to make yourself. I stole this bit, and I immediately made it worse, so I will never do it again. What's particularly useful about this asset is that it comes with a variety of modern and more fanciful buildings and stuff, so we can have a wide variety of different things that the player can add to their town this way. So I imported the low poly stuff and blocked the environment out with some mountains to establish the limits of the world, throw in a grid-based road network to give it that New York traffic kind of vibe. With that, we can actually start setting up the gameplay. But how, you ask? Well, it's very simple. I'll record that part when I figure it out, and if I don't figure it out, I'll just never post this video. Wait, no, don't leave that part in. So, the empty areas on the inside of the city orbital road are going to be marked off with these green tiles. Areas where it's okay to build buildings and stuff. All this greenery on the outside is protected by the National Park Service or something, so human beings aren't allowed to exploit it. I don't know, I just can't be bothered to add more tiles. All of the tiles are going to have a world tile script on them, and that's going to record whether the tile is free or occupied. That's going to be important for later when we pass words into buildings and have to determine whether or where the building can be placed down. But how do we place a building? Well, you're getting a bit ahead of yourself there. Seriously, calm down, you're scaring me. What I would ideally like is that you type in a word, it gives you a building, and then that building neatly snaps to whatever tile or tiles you want to place it over. That's just good UX. I know other acronyms also. SOLID, DOTS, CIA. To do that, we're going to need a system that turns words into buildings, so let's make one. We'll make a new Unity script, call it Building Parser, and inside Building Parser, we're going to make a custom class called Building, which is going to contain the actual game object for our building and all of the words you can use to make those buildings. Often someone will try and type one of multiple synonyms to mean the same thing, so we really want to try and catch as many of them as we can. For instance, with hospital, we also want to give it the same result for typing in clinic or hospice or something. Then we make a list of all those buildings, and when the player types in a word, the system searches through all of those buildings for a match, and when it finds one, it returns the connected game object and lets you place it in the world. Are there ways of optimizing? Probably, but I don't care. Cool, we have a system that will return a game object if we give it a certain word. That's nice or whatever, but it's still a lot of hot air unless we can get the player to interact with it somehow. So let's get the player to interact with it somehow. I'm going to add some UI to the game that lets the player enter a string, and then when they press the enter key or click the fancy button that says build, it'll either go, hey cool, here's your building, or it'll just sit there doing nothing forever. Let's have it spit out some debug logs so we at least know it's doing something. So as it turns out, it doesn't like using the special kind of text I was using to fill in the text box, and when I use the Unity generic one, it works fine, so I guess that's cool? I don't know. Anyway, let's push what we've got to the GitHub repository and well, I'm sure it'll be fine. How bad could it be? Anyway, we've got most of the actual systems in place, now we just need to do the hard bit, adding the buildings to the world. For this, we're going to be using some raycasting. A raycast is basically just a long straight line that you draw in a specified direction from a specified point. In this case, what we want is the ray to go in a straight line from the mouse's position on the screen, and let us know if it bumps into one of those, green tiles we made a minute ago. If it does, that means they're hovering the mouse over one of the tiles to place down a building, and then we know where the origin of the building can go. But that's only half the battle. The other half is checking whether the selection is valid, that is, whether the tiles the new building would be placed on are unoccupied. If even one tile is occupied, we can't place the building because then it would be overlapping another building, and that's specifically forbidden in most civic building codes. The solution is more raycasting. In this case, I found a 3D sensor toolkit on the Unity assets and created some generic building bases for buildings that take up 1 tile, 2 tiles, and 4 tiles, and then created variants of those bases with buildings on them. These tiles are casting more rays downwards to check what's beneath them, and every frame, which again is probably non-optimal, but whatever, it's checking whether its tile is occupied. If its tile is not occupied, it's fine, but if it is, it passes that information up to the parent object, which then blocks the player from placing it. Sure enough, thanks to a bit of code distributed between 3 different classes, here's the logic if you care, it works pretty well. It spawns in a funny place, but after that you can place it over any set of unoccupied tiles. For style points, I added rotation support, so if you hit Q and E, you can change the orientation of your building. So far so good. The only issue we have now is that we've basically created Hospital City, which is fine, but this game is set in the UK, where hospitals only exist in theory, so we should probably diversify our portfolio a bit. So I worked through the low poly assets I had access to and bolted on some more to the building list. With that, our city is starting to look like, kind of what a city might look like. If, it had an entire district dedicated to burying pharaohs. In the end, I got as far as adding 42 buildings, including Burger, but after that I decided I didn't care anymore, so I wanted to move on. We're pretty much done now as it is, but there's a few more quality of life things we can add to improve the UX still further. For one thing, we can only see the town from one angle. Let's set it up so that we can see it from multiple angles. For this, we're going to be using Cinemachine, which is tragically not available on the Unity, but instead is a package that you can install directly from inside the Unity engine. Basically, it soups up your camera stuff, allows you to add camera shake and whatnot, but in this instance, we're mostly just going to use it so we can change our camera angle on the fly with the left and right arrow keys. That's pretty good. I've also just noticed the UI sucks, let's fix that. To finish up, I added some various diverse flora and fauna to the scene to liven it up a little. And of course, this being a major metropolitan area, there's a huge pile-up to try to get in, caused as it always is by another billionaire using the nerve center of the town's road network to park his private jet. So that's what I've got. 41 buildings, a bunch of cars, and a dinosaur. If this looks like a Flash game you maybe played a decade ago but in 2D and with arguably a lot more care put in, let me know in the comments section so I can stop playing this inferior version. And now, I'm sure you're wondering how you can play this game for yourself. Well, you can't. Sorry, I didn't come up with the underlying idea, so publishing this would arguably be stealing, and so I will be keeping this terrible project to myself. Goodbye. Next time though, this. Reason, right, sim, belong, run, certain others in the table.